Welcome back to the show, everybody. It's going to be a good one tonight. We're going to talk about some really heartwarming things like COVID sniffing dogs. We're going to talk about a cancer survivor that plans to go to space later this year. We have 7 things. I mean, I know it's the evening right now if you're listening to this or watching this here on Sunday evening, but tomorrow morning we're going to give you 7 things that you should do in the morning if you want to have more energy. We're also going to look at a letter from Rochester Post Bulletin with, I'll just say it says local sheriff's bias is showing. It's a letter that was written in from a person in Orinoco, Minnesota. We're also going to talk about something that I think is really going to affect everyone if it hasn't already in the last year, because I feel like this is a ripple effect. New or used, either way, price hikes squeeze the U.S. auto buyers. Pretty intense show tonight because it's going to get, we have a queen here tonight too, by the way. Let's introduce our queen. We have the pizza queen here. Say hello.
Hi.
You're a special guest tonight. Tell us about yourself quick.
Oh, well, my name is Kayla Blunt. I am the 507 Pizza Queen. I got that name because I work for Topper's Pizza. I also work for FaceTime Business Resources. I'm a chamber ambassador, and I do the PR for the Rochester Elks Lodge. I have a history in slight politics and food service.
Excellent. Thanks, Pizza Queen, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And then also chilling, of course, is Craig.
Hey, Craig Ugland.
And then Lisa's chilling.
Lisa Lingle, Salt and Pepper Photography.
Actually, she's probably a little warm because of the sweater.
It is a little toasty in here, but it's okay.
And then Harmony is also chilling like a villain over there because we know she's villainous.
Hi, everybody. Harmony Sage.
Let's go to something that's a really kind of we were talking about this off camera, an interesting method to sniff out COVID, quite literally, in these dogs. Let's dig into that one right away. Man's best friend is taking his spot on the front lines in the fight against COVID-19. The Miami Heat made news in January by becoming the first pro sports team in the United States to use COVID sniffing dogs. This allowed the team to welcome fans into American Airlines Arena while many other pro sports teams continued to play in front of empty crowds. It goes on. I mean, it's a pretty short little, I guess, who brought this up?
I brought this up.
Yeah. Why? Let's just go there. Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Well, many reasons. I have a very special place for pets in my life and my dogs, and I like everybody's ready to be over with COVID.
Yeah.
And it was interesting to me because we personally had COVID at our home, and none of us had a temperature. And many of our friends had COVID, and none of us had a temperature. But every place you go, they take your temperature. Mm-hmm. And it's so intriguing. I kind of giggle a little bit. I'm not downplaying the virus. I know it's very serious, but that's what they're basing this all upon. So this is intriguing to me, a totally different approach by a dog being able to sniff this out. And then by the time I started researching it more, how efficient it was and how, yes, dogs can tell about drugs and the extent of it was crazy. As for counterfeit money, as for different...
I got to interrupt you. I got to interrupt you, Lisa.
What's that?
We're talking about dogs, and our watchdog is going crazy.
I love
Can you
it.
hear?
I love it.
Jackie's
she can
also
tell.
here chilling.
She can
Jackie.
tell.
Perfect timing.
It's great. A dog can tell a dog lover.
Right.
So, yeah. It was just more interesting. The more I read about it, I was like, wow, and... I just think it's interesting. I think it's a great way to do it. And if whatever it takes us to get back to normal, if it started in Miami with the Heat, I don't care if it's the Vikings, whatever it takes to get us back. And if it's going to be a dog sniffing for COVID, so be it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Jessie Keller said that she's a technical sergeant and trains canines at Luke Air Force Base and for local police, she said. She also said that she hasn't trained any of the COVID dogs yet, but she said it's definitely possible. What do you think of that? Like, how do you train a dog to sniff out COVID?
The article that I read that said that there was 8 of them that have been trained already. Mm-hmm. Much like anything, I think you could ask the same question about counterfeit money. How do you train a dog to do that? Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. So one research said they did a mask, but then there was the question, were we giving our pets COVID? Are we transmitting that? We don't know enough about that to transfer it to pets. Mm-hmm. And then another study said instead of that, we were going to do the saliva. Well, that's a whole nother story. Then if it's being transmitted that way, why are we wearing masks? So
Well,
they're
people would
figuring
say
it
that
out.
to answer that, people would say that when, just right now when I'm speaking, I'm spitting. Right.
But I mean, as for the dog testing.
Yeah. Okay.
So as for the dog testing, why is it okay for them to do sniff saliva, but it's not okay for them to sniff a mask? That's what I'm saying for the dog testing. There's just a lot of red flags there as to how they're going to make it happen.
Yeah.
But what I read, there was 8 of them that were already tested for this.
Yeah.
That were trained for this. And it takes about 3 months to train them. If I read that correctly.
Yeah, I believe so.
And from
yeah.
my understanding, how they trained them was from patients who actually contracted COVID. And so obviously from their masks. So they took the masks from these COVID patients and trained the dogs to sniff it out. And from that, this is where we are now. So I find that interesting. No different than, as you had just stated, sniffing out diabetes, cancer. If anything, I'd like to give a little credit for our furry companions.
Absolutely.
I mean, how amazing are they? I mean, to not be able to verbally speak to us, but yet in other ways be able to share, their beautiful skills with us, and especially also an assist in saving some lives.
And letting us get back to a newer normal. And there's, up at Seasons Hospice in Rochester, there's, I haven't personally been affected by it, but there's a cat up there that it knows when you're about to go, and it will go sit either outside your door or walk into that room for the patients that are about to pass. So, and that cat wasn't trained for that, but their animals are pretty intuitive. And I mean, if they can train a pet to find, or not a pet, a dog or a service animal to find drugs and money and cancer, why can't they be trained to find COVID? And it will let us get back to having events. Like, I've got Motley Crue tickets this summer. I really want to go. I have them in 2 different locations, and I really want to go. And if they get enough dogs trained, maybe they'll actually be able to have the concerts. But other than that, there's going to be a lot of things this summer that are going to be pushed another year.
So
I'm excited about it.
Sorry to interrupt. So my only thing I was just thinking as you were speaking was, so you have these dogs and you have them say at sporting events or whatever, and they're sniffing out before people can come in. Do you think that there'll be any concern of people feeling like they're being discriminated or whatever if they don't realize that they have COVID? You know what I mean? And so they're not allowed to come in. Do you guys see any?
Yeah, I thought about
issues with
that too.
Somebody will be pissed about it.
Yeah.
But
But I think they'll feel worse if they did, and knowing that they infected 30 people around them. You know what I mean? I'd rather feel a little ashamed not knowing it instead of having it and affecting people.
And
That's
maybe
just my
it'll
opinion.
push people to, like, crap, I'm gonna go to this concert. If I can't go because I have COVID, I'm gonna sell my tickets beforehand.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll make people be proactive and get tested before they go to the concert. Because if I were to get tested at the gate, I'd be upset with myself where I could have scalped those tickets for like $800.
Yeah.
Interesting, because you go to the airport, there's dogs
Everywhere.
right? So you're not going to do something intentionally. So maybe it's going to
Absolutely.
raise that awareness. I'm going to make sure too, because there's going to be a dog here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Make sure my purse doesn't have anything it's
So
not supposed to.
if I may share real quick, so I had to go
Why'd you look at
to
me?
the government center, and they have Mikey, the canine dog, there on floor 2, and you have to go through the metal detector and visiting Mikey before you can, venture on up to the upper levels. And so I just think it's interesting. And always, I'm sorry, when I go in there, I know I'm good. I know everything's good. But you have this moment of like, is this dog going to come up to me? It's just one of those moments. So
Because there's false positives.
yeah.
I mean, that's the reality. There are false positives.
And what if the dog was coming up just to say hi? I'm sure they're trained not to be super friendly and just going up. But you have this thing. I love animals. I very much am very close with them. And occasionally, sometimes I have animals come up to me all the time. So what if he's just trying to say hi and they're like, hey, wait, this is suspicious.
They have a mark though. Like if they find what they're looking for, they sit or
That's
they
true.
lay or
Yes.
So it's not just
Random.
sniffing in your pocket. It's,
Yeah.
it's when they find what they're looking for, they'll do something out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
And I'm like Harmony. I love animals more than anything. All kinds of animals, but in the same sense, unfortunately, there are people that are allergic to them.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a thing in the back of my head.
A lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. And, the dander and stuff like that. So that was the only concern that I had in the back of my head. It's like, but like Kayla said, they're at the airport. They're all over too. So I'm sure if you explained that you have a
Maybe they'll do the
Allergy.
non-allergenic dogs. That
Yeah. There's
The
always
non-shedding.
right.
The non-shedding.
Yeah.
And
Aren't those usually the little dogs? But
I don't know if that
Poodle.
really
I
exists.
mean, I'm just trying to
but-
imagine like this really cute Shih Tzu coming up and like, yep, you're positive. I don't know.
Hey, there's no swearing on the show.
Oh, sorry about that.
I think another thing too is dogs are friendly generally, right? So it could be another way for people to get tested that's less scary
Yeah.
than with.
That's
the
a really
normal
good point.
they could walk them through a nursing
Yeah.
home. And
Yeah, that's a good point. The positive is that they're trying to come up with methods to get things back to quote new normal. The thing that I struggle with is why do we fear COVID so much, and why are they saying that we're going to vaccinate everybody? Then what are the dogs going to do if everybody's vaccinated anyway? So there's sort of a circle with it for me. Like 240 million Americans are supposedly going to be vaccinated by June. There's 330 million Americans, or 50 or whatever it is now.
But that's not saying it's just because you're vaccinated doesn't mean you're not guaranteed to not get it. I mean, there's statistics showing that people have had both vaccinations and they're still testing positive. So just because you've had the vaccination doesn't mean it's going to be gone.
And I rest my case.
and just because you get it doesn't mean you can't get it again.
Exactly.
I met somebody yesterday that's had it twice.
Exactly.
It's like
So-
the flu, though. I mean, this is...
Yeah.
Strains or
So I think what my point is we need to just learn a lot more about it. Yes, we definitely, this is a positive thing. If they can put this and implement it, that's great. There are going to be some issues with it, though. We know that's coming.
Yeah.
It also opens up the future, should something happen again, then we have this past of trying things with animals like this that we could explore again.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. No, I agree.
It's a good
I
point.
can't wait for the
We need to
the
come up
COVID
with
sniffing
solutions.
peacock to come out. No, I'm just kidding. Just trying to be funny. I mean, we love dogs, but hey, there's other animals too.
Yeah, exactly. We need to find solutions, though, is the point, and good solutions that are that everybody can be okay with.
Yeah. And comfortable.
So, absolutely. Let's talk about cars. Did y'all read this article?
I did.
Yep.
It was a long one.
It's a long one.
It was really long.
It is really long. Did you fall asleep?
I listened to the verbal version of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Did it put you to sleep?
It's long. So the gist of this is they say that new cars jumped up 6%, used cars jumped up 14%, and the average new car is 40,578, whereas the average used car is 23,000. This is the fastest. It talks about how it's the fastest increase in decades. They have all kinds of quote unquote experts from different automotive industries, used and new. The problem is supply and demand. Obviously, it's a pretty simple thing, but we rely on vehicles in America. What are we going to do?
Bicycles.
Right?
At first, from what my small amount of research on this, I didn't think about the fact that it was supply and demand, because I definitely overlooked that there's been a lot of workers out of work,
Yes.
and the production might have actually altered the price. That was not what I was thinking about.
Yeah, it did. Well, the problem was the supply and demand issue was, yes, they shut plants down. They are regretting doing that because no one got COVID. So that was the thing. Like, they just shut them down, thinking that they're going to be, just a hot spot for COVID. It never really happened, and now they have this big issue, which for me is this going to affect pizza?
Exactly.
It could.
Well, food.
It
Could,
probably
because
likely
you pay
will.
for all the transit, right?
Yeah,
That's part of the cost.
Exactly. Fuel prices are going up unbelievably fast.
I don't think that's COVID related, but
It's
just a
Kinda
hundred.
everything a little COVID related right now.
That's how I looked at it.
Almost.
That scared me too. It wasn't just the cars. I mean, it's not
It-
just this. It's like the
it-
whole
This is
thing.
like a
Anything
nucleus.
with
Yes,
processing
yes.
with people involved has been restricted because people can't be shoulder to shoulder in the processing plants. I mean, we hit that last summer with the pork and the chicken and the meat processors.
Oh, that we haven't seen anything yet.
They had to close the plants down because people couldn't be next to each other, and then the farmers were stuck with all this livestock that
Right.
they had to do something with, and they couldn't send it to processors.
That's a real thing. We have a chicken wing problem.
Yeah.
Like, it's real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who would have thought?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I agree, if I may, real quick with Kayla. That's when I first started reading the article, I didn't really realize it was going to be about supply and demand. I actually thought it was going in the direction of people just can't afford them. I didn't, it was a great article because it was quite informative, and it let me realize, oh, yeah, that makes sense. There wasn't people actually being able to build these cars, manufacture them. But at the same time, my whole thought was, we can't afford these cars. Obviously, it's so obvious that we have to, take a level down and go to a used vehicle for the ones that are, looking for a vehicle. And so I'm kind of confused. I'm kind of like, okay, so that's obvious. It's supply and demand, but you're raising the prices and we're all still struggling financially. A lot of us are looking forward to the stimulus just to get by. And so I'm just kind of curious, like, where they think this is going to go, because yes, there's supply and demand, but there's still a lot of us that are, struggling financially. So I guess, I'd probably need to see a little bit more on how we're supposed to afford these vehicles when they've, 6% up for, what was that? Was that the new vehicle or
That's
the
new, 14% for used, because people are doing exactly that, buying used. So the used market is gone away. Like these auction houses and things, some of them, I mean, I've driven past them, they're closed. They have no cars.
And the interesting part is too, they've gotten to the point where they're completely comfortable selling vehicles that are over 100,000 miles, because where maybe they wouldn't have done that before and it would have went straight to auction, they're realizing it's just affordable, and that's what people are willing to pay for. Again, I assume it's all financial.
And here's another side to this, and I relate this to my business as a realtor, and everybody says, oh my gosh, I can get a premium for my house right now because the market's so short on inventory. So yes, you're going to pay more. You're going to pay more for a newer or new car, but you're also going to get more for what you're getting rid of, unless you're new to the market. If you've never owned a car before, that's where it's going to really hit you in the shorts, because you don't have something to sell that you're going to recoup some of those additional expenses on. So, in the housing, you're getting a premium for your house, but it's going to be right out the door when you buy your new one. Well, you're paying more for a car, but you're going to get more for what you're getting rid of. So.
It's kind of interesting too. A different way to look at it is with all the Zoom stuff, there are a lot of people that are not, they're working, but they're working from home. So people that, we need cars. We just need cars to live, to survive and stuff like that. But maybe you don't need mom and dad dropping one kid off at daycare and another one going to work and another one going to work, because both of them are working from home, doing Zoom and stuff like that. So they're, demand for cars. I'm not saying that they don't need a car, but upgrading to a newer car and stuff like that. Do you see what I'm kind of saying?
Yeah.
Just a different look at it.
I think we'll see that a little bit further down the road, more so because there were a lot of people that needed cars already going into COVID, and I think that's a part of the problem.
Yeah.
I'm probably going to be fixing up my vehicle for a while, just with this information,
Absolutely.
I mean, so.
And the other part too is to think about is this maybe self-inflicted by the car industry? And the reason I say that is it's gotten to be so automated. There's so many robots in car manufacturing now. So why can't they just catch up? And that's a very simple look at it. But like, they know there's a problem. People are probably jumping at the bit to make some more money. So get your plants running 24/7. Do your social distancing as you can. But it's not like they're processing meats. They're making cars, and a lot of that is.
I did look into that a little bit, and there's a steel issue, and
okay, so it's farther
because it's a ripple effect again. That's why I picked this article, because it just rippled. So even China is buying coal from other countries to keep their plants running. To produce steel. It's all. It doesn't say that in this article, but I'm like, well, why is this? Because that made sense. I wasn't going to even pick this article for this week, but it just kept going down this hole, right? And I'm like, wow, it is such a nucleus here with this, and then it just spreads out into all these other things. It's a chicken wing problem too, you know?
No, I just thought of something else, how this is going to affect the pizza industry because we have delivery drivers.
Yeah.
So these are typically anywhere is a minimum wage job as a delivery driver. You rely on tips. So you drive those used beaters, you know, and eventually they go and you have to get another car. And that's a big price difference.
Does everybody remember when they did that stimulus with, what was it? If you traded in your car, your used car, when was that? Was that 20 years ago already or something?
No, I think that was the beginning of the Obama administration.
Okay,
So, like,
that's
after
right.
08.
Because that's when, yes, that is right. So 15 years ago.
Was it during
probably.
the bailout of all the
That's what I was
car
thinking.
manufacturers? So that
Yes.
would've been-
Yeah, that's right. So 10-ish?
Sure.
Yeah, so only 10, 12 years ago. Okay, so it was a different, it created a problem, but this is a different problem that I see, right? Because that created the beater cars for the pizza, drivers, which is a great job, by the way. I know people that do it and they love it.
I
But
love when I get to fill in for those.
yeah. But the point being is that created that particular little small shortage of those types of vehicles for quite a while, whereas this is creating an industry-wide thing, and it goes all the way, the steel and everything. So, boy, this is kind of what I've been screaming since the beginning of COVID. They're not looking at the full court, right? They're looking at the one little thing, one little issue with the COVID, and we're going to start seeing a lot of issues like this, I think, unfortunately. It's scary. But this is why we're doing this, because Harmony would have never, you said yourself, you looked at this completely differently than you would have otherwise.
Well, that's
why
what
we're
I
doing the
love
show.
about our podcast is that we have so many different perspectives. I mean, you can have the information in front of you, but it just shows you that we all view it and see it in a different way, and we maybe see things that are missing. I always like to look at something and just like what's not being said. I'm a detective. I have that kind of a brain. So, somebody can say a lot, but it's always about the words or things that they're not saying.
Yeah, exactly. What are you trying to do to look at something different? Do we want to dig into a spicy post-bulletin letter? Do we want to talk about the wonderful cancer survivor? Or are we going to do the 7 things that we should do in the morning if you want more energy? I'm not going to pick it.
Spicy.
I was going to say,
We're
let's
going
go
spicy?
Let's go
Yeah.
spicy. Let's leave the feel-goody stories to the end.
All right.
Good idea.
The recovery.
Right.
The recovery stories. Letter to the Post-Bulletin. Local sheriff's bias is showing. Local county sheriff's bias on display and harmful to community. Recently, Dodge County Sheriff Scott Rose submitted a concerning post on the county's public social media platform. In it, Rose minimized the deaths of black men at the hands of law enforcement officers and issued thinly veiled threats of withholding officers to help surrounding communities in need. Perhaps most alarming was when Rose went as far as to state that the death of George Floyd was due to Floyd's own actions and not the officer's knee on his neck. Rose has drawn conclusions on a trial that has yet to take place. In a time where many are focused on listening, learning, and understanding their own dangerous racial biases, Rose shows no shame in proudly displaying his own. In doing so, he is further marginalizing many in the community he is charged to serve. Not only that, but he perpetuates the dangerously racist undertones of the law and order chant that has destroyed communities and killed our black neighbors for decades. And he is doing so on the threshold of what is sure to be a very tumultuous next several months. Personal biases rooted in racism have no place in our communities, and certainly not from elected law enforcement officers. As a community, we must demand better from those who are sworn to serve and protect us all. Protect us, all of us. As it has to start here in our small communities, we simply cannot stand for this. We must hold people like Scott Rose accountable for his words and biases. Annie Johnson of Orinoco. I want to say, going into this, a few things. I reached out to both Scott and Annie Annie did write in, which I'll read at the end of everything. She'll have the final word. I did reach out to Scott also, and he asked for a rain check. And so that's where that's at. I also want to preface this with, I know Scott. I've worked with Scott on a lot of distracted driving issues. I've had him on the podcast, on my other podcast. And so I have what might be considered bias, and I want to ask the four of you to make sure that I have that in check. I don't think that I do, because I do look at things, including the death of my daughter, completely unbiasedly and look at truth and fact. But I want to preface it with that. This show is designed to give opinions. This is not to say that it is truth. It's not investigative or anything like that. But we will share our opinions, and mine is also valid. But it also might be bias, and I might not even notice it. So I want to preface with that.
I'll jump on this grenade, I guess. Scott Sheriff Rose references the autopsy. And the autopsy was done by a medical examiner. Should be unbiased. And read the autopsy. He had deadly amounts of multiple narcotics in his system. He couldn't breathe before he said he couldn't breathe before he was even taken out of the squad car. Those are facts. If you want to pull those are the science things. Believe in science. That's what the autopsy report has said. He is just reiterating that. And the writer says, well, they haven't even done the trial yet, the investigation. Well, Scott's a law enforcement officer. His background is investigation and interpreting these things.
I want to pause you there. He did say that there hasn't been a trial yet. So
Correct.
I think that was a little bit misconstrued, in my opinion, that he made this comment that was a statement of fact. I don't think that's accurate, personally. I think that he made it very clear that, hey, this hasn't gone to trial yet. Let's let that happen.
Sorry, yes.
Yeah.
So, and, last summer with the campaigns, I was raked over the coals by a few people about this because it was a huge issue. And the Black Lives Matter movement, I agree that things need to change. And I wholeheartedly agree that our law enforcement needs to be held accountable. And they need to be accountable and remove the bad cops and stop protecting the bad cops. And that, I think, goes to the unions. But everybody needs to pull their biases out and look at the facts of the case. And do things need to change? Absolutely. But I don't agree with the flag that they're flying under. You're putting somebody on a pedestal that is not a good person or didn't have the history of being a good person in his community. There's better case studies to use for your cause than George Floyd.
George Floyd was, if memory serves, please people, we say it all the time on the show, fact check, go do your own research. But I believe it's a fact that he was convicted of assault on a pregnant woman and was holding a gun to her belly and threatened to kill the baby by gunpoint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's better ways to get your point across than to use somebody with such a horrible record that he had. So, and that's my opinion. Like Matt said, we're all about our opinions. And, this gal took what he said maybe out of context. I don't know. He's trying to, well, I'm not sure. I can't assume what Scott's intentions are with his post, but yeah.
I just think there's a sensitivity issue. That's just how I'm going to say it. When I read it, I just thought, I always agree that everybody has the right to their opinion. But again, you are serving your people, and these are your people, and you are saying these things about your people and your community. And the George Floyd thing's quite sensitive right now. The trial hasn't even occurred. There's a lot of people with different opinions and different feelings and emotions, deep emotions that are tied to that case. And so my personal opinion is, think before you speak. And if you decide to go ahead and do that, then be held accountable for your words and actions, just how we stated before. I think that he's reaping that right now.
I don't disagree with that. I will say, though, that I don't think so there's something that I made a promise in that I was going to do my best not to rage bait. And I think that there's a little bit of that that's happening on both sides of what people would call the political aisle. There's a lot of rage baiting. And it doesn't seem to matter whether the truth or the fact is that was the intention. But, maybe there was a little bait in there from
Right.
Scott's post. I don't know. I don't know his intention. I haven't been able to ask him.
And it is challenging. Would you, if he was able to defend his words right now, if he was able to give us a statement, it'd make, I think, everything a lot easier for us right now. You think about it, we're trying to read into what he was trying to get across. We're trying to figure out what his intentions were or are. And the fact of the matter is, he's the only one that can answer for that. So, and he's not ready to do so right now. So we need to respect
I'm not
that.
sure I would say he's not ready. He's out of town at the moment and things and on his way back, to my understanding. But I think the reality is this: when I got into when I said yes to the public space, all those years ago when my daughter died, I said that I'm going to do this and I don't give a flying frack what people say, how I do it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I've been in front of hundreds of thousands of people over the years, and I've done it the same way every single time. And it is very different than the way everybody else does it, plain and simple. And it is not rage bait. It does not feel sorry for me. It is not any of those types of things. And with that said, that has left me open to, I'm doing it wrong, and all that kind of criticism. And I had to say, and I still have to say, I don't care. And I think that's what we need to do. I think that we need to go out and say, I'm sorry that you took it the wrong way, but this is my opinion.
And own it.
And own it.
Yeah.
I think, like Harmony said, everybody's very sensitive about everything. And,
How did we get that way, though?
It's frustrating.
I think that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
A special.
Yeah.
Might be two.
Yeah. I think every life matters. If white lives matter, black lives matter, Chinese lives matter, everyone does. And it's such a hot item right now. And so anything that probably maybe wouldn't even get looked at before is now just, under the microscope. Like
Everything's
crazy.
under scrutiny.
Yes.
Everything.
So something that maybe was innocently said, not said, his opinion, not his opinion, it's definitely being micromanaged and micro looked at right now.
And people are taking things out of context.
Yes, I would agree.
And that's the problem.
Intent is
says,
important. And
do your research.
Yeah.
And some stuff that happened to me last year, I left the posts up to say, if you want to find out the truth, go read the original posts and see that these things were taken out of context. That's the problem. And
Yeah.
the media isn't helping
No.
any of this.
No.
intent is also an issue. What's the intent of it? Of whether it's Scott's post or this letter? What's the intent? Do you intend to harm? I'm going to bring up a couple of things right now. One is I reached out to some of my friends of different backgrounds. Let's just put it that way, and several of them, and I got their advice on this particular thing, and they sent me a whole list of things. They sent me videos, Denzel Washington videos, Morgan Freeman videos, some other prominent, people. Come on, Craig.
It was as silent.
This was going
I'm
this
gonna
was
take
going
that as a
well.
sign.
Next subject.
We're on the right track.
Apparently,
Yeah, exactly. And so they're like, well, here's really the reality. I hired people of different cultures in my business in the past. So I understand that there's some things that are sensitive but so really the short version here that I want to do is they said, if you do anything, this Don Lemon interview with Morgan Freeman, and I'm going to read that right now. I think before we go any further, I was really fascinated by some of these videos that they sent and some of these really prominent black people that what they say about this and what they've been saying for a really long time. Quite honestly, I mean, Malcolm X. They sent me some Malcolm X stuff. I was pretty. I'm like, we could literally spend an hour on the stuff that they sent me. But here's Don Lemon of CNN. He says, and I want to say this too. I took this off of CNN.com transcript site. So this is directly from their transcripts. So Don Lemon said, so can I go back to, because I thought what you said was fascinating, because you called it bull when you said people can't pull themselves up. Do you think that race plays a part in wealth distribution or either a mindset that you can't? And Freeman interrupts and says, today? ? And Don Lemon says, yes. And Morgan Freeman says, no. And then Don Lemon says, you don't? Morgan Freeman says, no, I don't. I don't. You and I were proof, Morgan Freeman says. Why would race have anything to do with it? Put your mind to what you want to do and go for that. It's kind of like religion to me. It's a good excuse for not getting there. Don Lemon said, you know, I said this will probably get me in trouble, but I said to some of my colleagues recently, so I know that it's an issue. But it seems like every single day on television I'm talking about race, and it's because of the news cycle. And it's in the news. But sometimes I get so tired of talking about it, I want to just go this over. Can we move on? Morgan Freeman says, and if you talk about it, it exists. Don Lemon says, right. Morgan Freeman closes with, it's not like it exists and we refuse to talk about it, but making it a bigger issue than it needs to be is the problem here. That's how that ends. It's pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Morgan Freeman, I actually heard that. Morgan Freeman right now has some amazing quotes and memes, whatever you want to call it, and it's inspiring. I mean, his page right now is amazing too.
Is it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's not my normal typical memes that I post, but it's very meaty and it's great. He's very outspoken with it.
And he's not the only one.
No,
Denzel Washington. There was a ton of Denzel Washington stuff that a couple people had sent me.
And I had sat down with some friends last year too of different backgrounds, and
we're really somber about this. I want to just interject that right now, and I think that's a good sign. I think that I was worried about how this would go, to be perfectly honest, because it's so heavy. And I don't mean worried in the sense of like we're going to say something stupid or whatever else. I mean just worried in the sense that it might be taken out of context. Right. And I think it's really important for people right now that are watching or listening. The intent here is I asked a person to be here today that don't look like us, and they didn't want to be, and I think that's important to say that. I did invite some people to be here that would understand this culture better, but one of the statements that I received back was we don't need to talk about it because the more we talk about it, the more it exists, and that's exactly why I chose Morgan Freeman's today. It's heavy.
I think the reason why I'm being so quiet is because I ultimately want to give it the respect that it deserves. I mean, he said it. I guess I'm living in this world. I'm 45 years old, and I'm still questioning why we are judging people by the color of their skin and their cultures. Maybe I'm just being naive. I don't know. I'm just really bothered by that, how we're still talking about it. I don't understand whether, somebody's African American or white or Chinese or Indian, why we were making such big things about this. We're all the same inside. This is my spiritual side coming out. I'm like, we only look different on the outside. A lot of us have the same goals and ambitions and spirituality and this and that. And it's like, to me, because I love hearing other people's perspective. I love meeting people from different cultures because I just feel like that I'm just getting so much information. I'm learning so much more. It just bothers me, and I'm just quite sensitive to it. So I think I was quiet because I was just like, Morgan Freeman hit it on the nail on the head. It's like, why are we still talking about this? Why is it even still an issue? That bothers me so much.
Off that, we are all the same inside too. We have the same goals, but we also have the same worries and the same issues and same fears.
Yes.
So being judged is just so huge. The fear of failure, the things that keep us down, that's all the same too. So there's just so much to go on about that.
And what I will say, just to end it, is to judge someone is to be human, but to share your opinion is about class. It depends. And what I mean by that is we're all human. We're all, we've been conditioned. It's just kind of that world we tend to, even when we're not being aware of it, we're judging things or judging people. And it's just really about, we're all entitled to that, but it's about when you start verbally sharing that opinion and you start going on media, and social media, and you're talking about it, then you just have to question it. I mean, we're human. We all make mistakes, but at the same time, I think we need to sort of embrace that, again, that we all are human. As Kayla was stating, we all have the same concerns.
I think that's just human nature of judging somebody when you first meet them. I mean, go back to the caveman. You're judging somebody to protect yourself.
Survival?
Survival.
Okay.
But it's how you use that judgment that I think determines a relationship with other people.
So public things too, when you choose to enter into the public sphere and you make the decision that things are going to be public and people will be able to see what you're doing and saying, your judgment, that fear of judgment also is altered, and your intent and what you put out there also, you made the decision that you were going to be public, and you then accepted that people will be judging you. So your intent with what you put out and you say and your actions, that you have to make a better call. So then you let it go. You're open to judgment now.
That's a good point.
That's a really good point, and that's so accurate, super accurate. Let's talk about my logo, and this is part of the story. I had this thought, and Lisa, you've heard this. I've done this live in front of a live audience, and you've heard this. But my circles. So my logos are circles. Remember this?
Yep.
Yeah, you were there.
Last week.
And while it ended up, the circle logo thing, it ended up by accident. It actually is. It's a large part of my philosophy, and that philosophy is. And I've said this in many, many different speeches, but my philosophy is that we make and create these circles, and we do that to block people out and block things out. And it's just nature. What I wanted to do was I wanted to draw a bigger circle around your circle and then now include you. And it doesn't matter. And I say this, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican or independent or libertarian or black or white or yellow, or it doesn't matter. I don't care. It's about Stephen Covey's, he says we need to seek to understand first and then be understood. And I might be paraphrasing that, but he said it's very close to what he said. And that's so true, and that's my philosophy. And as soon as we understand that we don't put people in those places, in those labels, we will then realize that everybody's human. And there's not all these different circles, and there's not all these different classes, and there's not all these different races, and there's not all these different things, but it is actually that we are all human beings, and we do have all those same fears. We are the same on the inside. We do want, essentially, we want to be able to do our thing as long as our thing is not harming other people. That doesn't matter our religion. It doesn't matter. That's really the nuts and bolts of it. And that's exactly the point of my circle logos, is that everybody's included. I didn't ask Harmony her political view. I didn't ask Kayla as a guest what your political view is. I didn't. It doesn't matter. That's how we learn. What's your political view? Don't say it. You don't need to. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
you.
That's the point, right? The point is we're trying to understand. That's just it. And I think that's so important.
If everybody thought the same, it wouldn't be any
It would be a very boring world, wouldn't it? And
the show would be too.
It would be right. And I believe, and I hope I get this right, but I believe Maya Angelou said something: we're more alike than we are different.
Yes.
And just adding to that, if we just take the time and be patient and, get to know somebody instead of judging them right off, I think they would find that to be true.
Maya Angelou also said, do the best you can until you know better. And then when you know better, do better.
Love that.
And that's super important too. We're going to give Annie the last word now.
Sure.
I do appreciate all the people that I reached out to and the advice that I got to talk about this, and I appreciate Annie sending in her statement as well. And it reads, all I really need to say about this is that my letter, is anti-racism in action. You shouldn't need to hear me say that I am vehemently not a cop hater or that I was brought up as a conservative in a tiny rural town. Although both of those things are true about me, they miss the point. It should have been Trayvon or Tamir or Freddie or Sandra or Philando or Elijah or Ahmad or Brianna or Michael but it was George. I struggle with why it took me so long to become actively anti-racist. I really do. That why has many complex answers. I settle now on that. Perhaps it took me watching my children see a man who looks just like their daddy suffocate to death under the knee of a police officer for me to start asking the really hard questions. What is the truth in all of this? What's really happening here? So I dug in. I've read and listened and asked and watched and learned. I tore down old biases and looked through a new lens. And that was true without a single shred of credible doubt, is that racism, as it has always been, is rampant and it is everywhere. Once we accept that truth, we have conscious decisions to make. We can choose to actively engage in racism, which most people do not choose. We can stay in our lane, stay quiet, comfortable, and be complicit. Or we can choose to be actively anti-racist and work every single day to ensure that we won't stand by and accept racism in any form from any person, group, institution, or system. I understand that there will be arguments about whether what the sheriff posted on the public community page was rooted in racism or not. Spoiler alert, it was. But that is simply reflective of the extreme amount of work that needs to be done in this space by almost everybody. Above all that noise, though, what I want most out of all of this is to be an example of what it looks like to commit to and practice anti-racism, no matter how uncomfortable that might get. And that is Annie Johnson's statement. She asked me to also include a couple of different quotes, and I'm going to only include one of them. Austin Channing Brown said, I need a love that is troubled by injustice, a love that is provoked by anger when black folks, including our children, lie dead in the streets, a love that can no longer be concerned with tone because it is concerned with life, a love that has no tolerance for hate, no excuses for racist decisions, no contentment in the status quo. I need a love that is fierce in its resilience and sacrifice. I need a love that chooses justice. I'm going to not ask you to comment on any of this, but I am going to say that those are opinions of Annie Johnson and of let me pull up his name so I don't get it wrong at all. Austin Channing Brown. That is not my opinion. That is not Craig's, Kayla's, Harmony's, or Lisa's. We already weighed in on our opinions. But I will say this, we're going to dig into that a little bit more in some of these things that I have really uncovered in investigating this, and we'll talk about some other articles in coming weeks. So something to look forward to.
That was heavy.
Yeah.
That felt very heavy, I'm going to say. And rightfully so, it should feel heavy. It should be, and I hope that it weighs on people's hearts and minds as much as I believe it has on ours.
I feel like our community, though, I will say, and I want to say the name specifically, but I went into a store the other day, and there's a lot of Black Lives Matter stuff, and every day is Black, and it was almost anti-racist. And it wasn't.
It was almost racist, you mean?
It was almost.
Not anti-racist. It was almost racist.
I guess, yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there wouldn't be that section of the store in our community that was White Lives Matter or I mean, there was baby bibs, there was baby this. It was crazy that I was actually seeing this in a store in Rochester, Minnesota, of all this Black stuff. And I just couldn't believe it. I really was.
And all I'll say about that is if you're seeing something like that on baby bibs, and this is another podcast, but the word that comes to mind is conditioning.
Exactly. And that's
let's talk about seven.
Yeah.
Let's talk about 7 things you should do in the morning if you want more energy.
Take a deep breath.
Yeah.
Woo!
Oh, breathe in that beautiful.
That is number
oxygen.
1. Take 10 deep breaths, as a matter of fact, Craig. That's number 1 on the list. Number 2 is hydrate. Coffee counts.
I was so happy to hear that.
Yeah. Number 3 on the list is get moving. We also have number 4, make sure you're actually eating enough. And let's go down to 5 and be mindful of your sugar intake. Number 6, ignore your phone. No memes, meme twins.
Don't even have it. Number
7, spend some time really getting to know your own preferences. I'm not going to read the article, another long one. It was a good one. I really enjoyed this one. So thanks for, putting this one in here. The thing that I do fairly religiously is I don't generally, I wait 10, 15 minutes before I mess with my phone, depending upon if I have to shut my alarm off or not. But otherwise, there was some good information here.
I love it because it's a lot of self-care. It's what you can do for yourself to start your day out right, make yourself feel better. I definitely have a sugar issue, so I could relate to that. I love my sweets. It's awesome to hear that coffee's acceptable for your, because gosh, I do need to drink some more water. But I love it. Just to go a little further with that, having an attitude of gratitude will take you a long ways. Waking up in the morning and just being grateful that you woke up. Not everybody's going to get the luxury of that. So I definitely incorporate that in my daily, just kind of thanking the universe. Thank you for letting me live another day and do what I do.
Well, I picked out this article. It was hard to pick out an article, but I chose this one because it relates to my life, and I know that it relates to Lisa's life. We both live very fast lives, and we are doing stuff all the time. You were on the news and in the newspaper over the last year when COVID hit. You were just doing everything and anything. Yep. So busy all the time, and then you had to oh no, what am I doing now? There's nothing to do. And I found that in my life too. And I also get approached all the time with how are you so busy? How do you do all that? Well, I am very, very intentional in the morning when I wake up. Very much so. All of those things on that list, aside from looking at my phone, I do. I wake up and I drink water. I have a bottle of water next to my bed, and I drink, even if it's just a sip. If I can only handle a sip, or if I can handle half the bottle, then I do that. And then I recently tried to not look at my phone, and that is really, really hard.
It is.
It is so hard to do that. But I am researching it more, and I'm noticing that, health-wise, it really, I shouldn't be looking at my phone, whether it's just because of the stress with my work emails, with my social media, and the light. the actual light of it too. So I get up in the morning, I drink my water, I go make my coffee, and I go to the gym and I just walk 2 to 3 miles a day. And then I continue drinking, and then I'm very careful with my sugar intake. So I usually wait for any sort of sugar until about noon, and that helps me.
Good for you.
That's great.
It was hard to get into that habit though, because I'm 30. So what is it that keeps me in my structure?
Do you eat breakfast? Are
No,
you good at breakfast?
not
See, I'm
usually.
terrible. I don't eat breakfast. I just wake up and I'm not hungry. And I know that, as it's been stated for years, that's the most important meal of the day. So I'm trying
But
to
it's
work on
not.
that myself.
That part of that article is finding what's healthy for you.
What for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's your own, like
Whatever
you
your
might
own preference.
need that food in the morning. Like your body might be weak, and you might. So there's some days where I know that I'm feeling a certain, like if I do intermittent fasting, I feel really weak in the morning and dizzy, and like I'll stumble to the bathroom because I'm weak. So in that situation, I know I should probably eat something. Like I can break my habit for my, intermittent fasting week, and I can eat something because I need to. But generally, I don't.
So I think that's a good cue to say, listen to your body. Your body knows best.
Yeah, I've tried intermittent fasting and things, and I actually I'm pretty. I think I don't know necessarily like it, but I'm good at it. But what I find is then I eat a lot in like that 8 hours.
So when you say intermittent fasting, just for our listeners and viewers out there, what is that exactly?
Yeah, so I'm not sure I do it right by any means, but what it is and what I've read is like you eat for 8 and off 16.
Okay.
You can drink water or whatever, but that's about it. So if you're gonna, you start at noon and you are done at 8,
Yeah.
as an example. Some people do 10,
Yeah.
but 10 and 14, but I found that I was eating more when I would do that than I would if I just ate when I felt like I needed to. So it didn't really work as far as that went. Yeah, but my energy level is the same.
What's the philosophy behind that fasting?
The
Because
intermittent
I've always
fasting.
been told, have a decent breakfast, and that kind of gets your energy going for the day, and eat small bits throughout the day instead of 2 or 3 super big meals.
Yeah. That's what I've understood too from what, here goes to conditioning again. You think about it from when you're really tiny, you always had breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that's when you ate, and if you're lucky enough, you got snacks in between. And, you think about it and you think about the amount of food that you were given for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Dinner always you tend to get a lot more food at dinner. Well, we all know now, like eating big meals and then trying to go to bed doesn't agree with your body. So from my understanding is eating like 5 really tiny meals or whatever you want to call it seems to benefit the body better. And again, to each his own and what works best. But I have noticed that, and weirdly, it depends on what your situation is and what your life is. Is it fast paced or this? But I used to be a grazer, I would call it. I'd be at the counter and I'm eating olives and pickles and cheese. But I was mindful. That, okay, I'm full. I wasn't sitting in front of the TV. I wasn't reading the newspaper or on my phone going through my memes. I was recognizing that I was full and I didn't need to eat anymore, and that seemed to help. We all lose track at some point. I've gained weight. COVID has a little bit, quarantine had a little bit to play with that. But, again, I love that. It's like, listen to your body. It really does know best. It's when it's hungry, feed it. Don't deprive your body, because then that's what happens. You tend to eat a lot more later on.
And that's kind of when I did the intermittent fasting, I would just eat way too much in that time frame, and then it didn't work.
Intermittent fasting works for me pretty well. When I do eat big meals, I get tired. Like that's been like that my whole life, and I've recently really, really seen that. So I'll eat like a pizza like
Weird.
yesterday.
Weird,
and
yeah.
like I'll just, when I'm done eating, it's like, okay, I pretty much need to go to sleep because I have no energy at that point. Whereas if I eat a small meal, I have energy still. So it's like if eating a full meal is going to put me to sleep, I'm going to avoid that unless I'm ready to go to sleep.
Yeah. And what I will just say, because this is my experience too, I'm very big on not depriving yourself. When you do tend to deprive yourself and you're conditioning yourself to be like, I'm not going to have sweets, I'm not going to have this, you tend to eat more of it. You will binge. So one of my big things that I say is like, it's funny. It's like we're adults now, so we can go to the grocery store and buy whatever we want. So oftentimes I'll go by the bakery and I'll be like, oh man, chocolate cake sounds really good. And I'll be like, well, I can't buy a whole chocolate cake. I'm not going to eat all that. Well, in the past few years, I'm like, I'm going to buy a chocolate cake and maybe I might only eat 1 or 2 pieces from it, whatever, but I'm going to buy myself that chocolate cake. It's just kind of, you need to have like, I don't know, people call them cheat days, this and that, but it's all about don't deprive yourself. Your body knows what it needs. If you want to have cake, have cake.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I'll buy that cake
That self-control.
every time.
I just want to know where all you can eat sushi fits into this because it's just a challenge.
It fits in well because it's actually pretty healthy for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it'll fill you up fast.
5 rolls. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a great article. It was very inspiring. I am wired. I do not have caffeine in my life, or I'd be bouncing off the walls. And it was very hard. I do remember when the Post Bulletin got a hold of me because I was working 3-4 jobs and 5 in the morning till 11 at night. And that was a shock. That was really hard to calm down. And it was panicky. It was like panic attacks. And what am I going to do? So the article was really fun to see. I don't do the caffeine and the food talk we just talked about, but the phone thing is hard. I think I'm the only one who doesn't have the phone at the table currently, and I've had some issues here, but I feel like I almost need to. It is, because my life is on that phone. Yes. Do I look at my business first, or do I look at memes? I look at memes. I'm not going to lie. I'm being honest. But I feel like it's kind of like before we got onto our phone so much, we would have got up and read the newspaper. So it's kind of like it's a newspaper.
And
you know what I mean?
The newspaper.
Yeah.
Can I
It's the
just
same
say
thing.
that I really do miss that? The traditional part of like just getting the paper in the morning and looking through it. I do miss that. It's so much easier to go to your phone and go to this, and that. But I do love that, and I. It's sad because I see that being a dying art, sort of. You know,
It's pretty dead, actually.
Yeah, there's going to
It's
be
not dying.
There's
It's
going
pretty
to
much
be a day
dead.
when
Unless,
there
of
will be
course.
no such thing as newspapers.
Yeah.
So since I read this article, I've been really trying really hard to not look at my phone. So instead, I'll go in, I'll make my coffee, and I'll go in and watch the news from the night before or earlier in the morning, whichever works, whatever time I'm up. But that's helping me. So actually with my screen time too, I'm down to 4 hours and 30 minutes a day. Whereas
that's good.
like a couple months ago, I was at like over 12 hours a day. Like, and it was like, I was realizing like, this is an actual issue. And
That's a very good point. If we all really, if our phones came to us and been like, hey, by the way, which I'm
you
sure
have
it does. It
you have an
tells you,
iPhone?
right?
You
It
have an
does.
iPhone?
Oh
You
my
have an
goodness.
iPhone?
I would be just flabbergasted, and maybe that would change our mindset a little bit. Like, oh my God, 7 hours.
You-
I
It's
don't
on the
want to
phone.
know how much
Yeah.
I'm on my
It was
phone.
You
not
have
like
an
that.
iPhone?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do I, because that
So I
gives
get
you
alerts
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Yep,
wow.
same here.
I can tell
I
the screen
actually
time,
get
too.
stuff. I get alerts that says you better start looking at this because you haven't looked at it for a long time. Literally, social media sends me alerts. I
It's
swear.
intentional.
Wow.
That's the way that it's built.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you haven't been on it enough. You need to look.
But Craig made a good point too, though, because a lot of, there's a lot of social media, but there's a lot of business stuff too. So you got to consider, there's emails, there's stuff like that that's being tied into that. It's not all just memes and Facebook and Instagram and.
I think it's,
excuse.
and I just think it's
Sure.
one of those things where you almost sort of have to plan it into your schedule. You almost have to tell yourself, okay, I'm going to take 2 hours where I'm not going to be on my phone and I'm going to spend time with family, or I'm going to focus on this. It's sad, but it's gotten to that point.
The experts recommend that too.
Yeah.
It's really hard, but like time blocking and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And
Take
choosing times
vacations
for your phone.
I say take vacations from social media. I'm actually getting about that point. I'll take like a 5-day vacation from Facebook. I'll let everybody know because I love my memes. And it's very flattering that people wake up and they want to read those memes or look at them. And for myself, sanity wise, I need to like take a break. Plus,
Teach
I want
me
them to
how.
miss me.
It's
They
hard to
gotta
do
miss
that.
me. It
When
is.
we go on vacation and we go with different friends, and we intentionally try to leave. I have to have my phone with me for my business, but we intentionally keep our phones in the beach bag. And then there's always the one person that's on their phone. It's like, we paid thousands of dollars to sit on the beach and look at that and have drinks.
And they're all
brought to
sneaking it.
us.
They're like, don't look at me.
Stay off your dang phones.
Yeah.
But it's personal choice.
And the camera's on. The camera's on the phone too. I mean, and
Yeah.
coming from a professional
so
photographer,
true.
it's sad to say that you can get a very nice quality photo from sometimes the last couple of vacations we went on. Yeah, do I want to bring my big professional camera? I don't. I mean,
No,
parts of me do.
right.
I want to enjoy the moment, and I'm okay with the photograph I'm getting from my phone. So not only is
point.
it just a phone phone, not as just social media. It's a camera too.
It's a calculator. It's a calendar.
Right.
It's so many things that it literally is like, come to me.
Right.
You know, so.
It's also your job. Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
with what I do, like
Exactly.
if I did one day, and one day I actually shut my phone off and like went to see what I could do with my day, right? Mm-hmm. And when I turned my phone back on, like I had messages.
Did you
I
have more
noticed
anxiety
you weren't-
from that? Because
No,
you,
I felt great. Like,
oh,
this
good.
is a good chance for me to see what I can do and give
Okay.
it an opportunity. It was a test.
I
for my
always
own self.
wondered that if somebody would get more anxiety, all of a sudden the bing, 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 all the things are going off. You're like, what did I miss? So I would imagine it takes time, baby steps. I would
did,
think.
actually, so that's true. So I did ease my way into that one day by doing a couple hours at a time, and it was really hard to do that.
Yeah.
But then when I told myself I'm going to do it for a whole day, and I did it, and I felt great. Like I have my own life now, but when I turned my phone back on, there was emails and there was messages on just about everything. Where were you? Where have you been? I noticed you didn't post. Are you okay?
Yeah.
Like people were
That's so
actually
true.
genuinely concerned.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
appreciate that they were concerned, but it's also like, oh no, what have I done to myself?
Well,
That's
it's
a good
like
point.
you go on vacation and you land and you turn your phone on, and my wife's just like, just turn your notifications off because it'll ding for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything
Right.
that's said.
A
This
cute.
was really good.
And you're apologizing, like, sorry.
But it's also intentional too, because when I chose to put myself into the public sphere, I knew that was a commitment I was making too, and it had,
Right on.
and I have to be intentional about those things.
But you also got to take care of yourself, right? So that's good. Sorry.
No, you're
It's,
fine.
it's hard to do. I'm working on that balance.
Right. A cute small story. My kids, him and his girlfriend were in Madison, Wisconsin, and they went out to a nice restaurant. And two college kids, that's a big deal. And they were having this fancy meal that probably either one of them could not afford. And when it was all said and done, and they
Did
brought...
they dine and ditch?
No, but it was close.
Oh,
it was
oh,
close.
okay.
The whole paycheck.
I mean, this was a big deal. Like, we would maybe just go out to eat. Like, they saved up to go out
No,
to eat
I
and do
know.
this
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And when she brought the bill, it was all paid for. And it was from an older couple that watched these two. And say, I don't know how old you are, but you look like you were 20, 21, to see you guys not even bring your phones out, not even touch your phones.
Love
It was
it.
just really sweet to
That's
see.
great.
That is
And
so
yeah,
cool.
it was a cute little story that, they were into each other. They didn't need the phones to be on their date. So,
Those
got
were the
goosebumps.
good old days.
yeah,
Yeah,
it was
that's
Eli
really
and
cool.
Emma.
I did
So
too.
yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Finding joy.
That's really cute.
This is a cool story. Childhood cancer survivor revealed as crew member for all civilian mission to space. Wow. St. Jude physician assistant Haley, and I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name, sorry. 29 is the second, I probably should have looked it up. I'm sure it's probably simple, but it's spelt really wild. So, is the second member of an all-civilian SpaceX mission to space later this year in 2021. Haley thought her childhood dream of being an astronaut was over when she had part of her femur removed. She was treated for bone cancer at 10 years old. Now, 19 years later, the physician assistant in the oncology unit at St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital is set to realize her dream of traveling to outer space. Blah, blah, blah. There's the CEO and founder of Shift for Payments that is paying a lot of money to SpaceX to raise some money for St. Jude Children's Hospital. It's a pretty remarkable story.
It's a great story.
Yes, and there's so much of this kind of thing that's going on in the world, and we try to rage bait and anger, and it sells, and war sells, and all these kind of things sell. But this kind of stuff is happening every day. Not this scale, but this kind of feel-good, heartwarming story. Cancer survivors are just doing remarkable things, and disabled people, and all these different wonderful stories are out there. So I felt good about this one. Really good.
I felt this was such a feel-good story, which, is much needed. I love the fact that, she's giving back, and her dreams get to come true. So from my understanding, Haley, again, at 10 years of age, had that femur removed, and for whatever reason, she sort of felt that some of her dreams were sort of taken away at that time to only give back and become this physician assistant of all places, St. Jude's. It's just a totally beautiful story. Plus, I love it because there's some futuristic stuff to it. You get to go up in a rocket and you get to do some experiments and learn some things. I'm sure all around it's just a dream come true for everybody involved. And I love the give back portion to St. Jude's. They're trying to raise $200 million for these families that cannot afford their medical bills and for these children to have second chances at life. What an amazing story.
There's something to be said about stress and how it affects stress and anger and anxiety and how it affects your healing process. And what the article said, and I've read this before, they literally take all the stress away from the family at St. Jude. That's what this money is for. Like, they don't have to worry about a place to stay. They don't have to worry about food. They don't have to worry about any of it. And that really, helps the child heal because the parents can be there to love and not be worried and things like that. And that's so powerful. I love it.
And I like the fact that she's using this as a teaching tool for her patients to say, your dreams still can come true, even though you're going through this medical concern right now. Don't give up on your hopes and dreams.
Mm-hmm.
That's
and
beautiful.
I think that's a big part of that story is
Walking
role
testimony.
model.
it's
Right.
a learning tool for her patients. So.
Everything about it was just a beautiful story. I actually saw it on the news, and then when I got that was going to be the article, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited because it did. It just made you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. It was just so positive. I love it.
It's just so nice to have feel-good stories. Just, when I used to watch the news, which again, I've stated before, I don't watch the news. 2 years ago, I stopped watching it because of all the, to be blunt, all the crappy stories. There was so much negativity, whether it was political or whatever, that I found myself worrying about things that I had no control over for a week straight. And so the fact of the matter is when you get stories like this where people are trying to make a difference in the world and we're actually considering and worrying about our future and our children's future, which is what I'd like to add. Wow, it's amazing. I love when humanity comes together and we embrace something like this.
For sure.
I definitely got the feel goods reading it. I too took a big break from watching the news and reading newspaper, and it impacted my life like significantly. And it was because of all the negativity and the extra stress, and just I didn't need it, didn't want it. And now I started watching the news again because I want to be connected to my local community. So I'm watching local news very specifically. I listen to local radio so I know what's going on around me. But I got the real feel goods from this because it was like, even though it's just if it's one person, like that changes their life forever. And that's all it takes in life. So is one big thing,
Yeah.
and think about all of the other great things that are coming from this.
I know.
This is why I'm involved with service organizations, because one day, one thing, one person does so much.
I know. I love that too. I agree. What a good example, right? So let's hope, we're loving it. We're feeling good about it. Let's hope other individuals that are reading the story just sort of get the feel goods and want to impact their community.
Yeah.
Step back and
And appreciate
what's
life.
important.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything else on this?
I think we'll leave it at that. It feels so good.
It
and
does.
fuzzy.
I just don't know that we can add to that. I just want to shine a light on it is really the only thing.
Yeah, way to
You know
go,
what I
Haley.
mean?
I just like to say I'm not saying that she's going to listen to our podcast, but way to go.
Yeah.
Way to go for being an amazing human being.
Someone though is going to listen to it, and that's going to resonate with someone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think a lot of us agree that when we are in this life of service, I think I've heard very frequently, if we can impact or make a difference with one person, we've done our job.
Hey, thanks for listening this week or watching. And if you haven't already, hammer the like button. Actually, just watch this video.
Hey, a lot of people have asked how they can support the work we're doing here at Matt Logan Speaks. Well, you see this hammer that I got in my hand? It's pretty big. All you have to do is hammer the share button. Go ahead and hammer out a comment to us. Go ahead and hammer the like button. Go ahead and hammer the subscription button. Go ahead and hammer the notification bell so that when we have new content up, you're the first to know about it. We really appreciate the comments, shares, likes, because you know what? That's the best way you can support us, because the algorithms on all these fancy computers, that's what they need. We appreciate it.